This is Sparks Sustainability, and I'm Eric Sparks. One of the biggest challenges facing industry around the world today is how to adapt and evolve from a linear economy to a circular economy. In our current linear economy and business models, we extract materials from the earth, process them, ship them long distances, manufacture goods from those materials, ship the goods long distances, use those goods, and then dispose of those goods, whether in a landfill, thrown along the side of the road, or floating down a river and ultimately ending up in the ocean. A few products get reused, and even fewer get recycled, but overall it's generally a one-way trip from raw material extraction to disposal. The idea of a circular economy is that we find ways to repair and reuse products much more, and at their end of life, they become the raw material inputs for some other manufacturing process. They get remade into something else. The fashion industry is currently one of the most wasteful and polluting industries in the world. People are buying far more clothing than ever, wearing each piece less, and almost all of that clothing eventually ends up in landfills. Manufacturers know that each piece will be worn less, and they want each person to buy more and more, so they are making them cheaper and less durable. In addition, they tend to overproduce to ensure that they have enough stock to meet each season's possible orders. So a large amount ends up not being sold at all and just goes directly to a landfill. Also, one of the biggest sources of microplastics in our oceans is from the washing of clothing. Many fabrics are hybrid materials that contain some types of plastics, and every time you wash them, tiny pieces break off and end up in our water. Fish in every ocean around the world have been found to have these microplastics contaminating their bodies, and eventually our bodies when we eat them. I started thinking about all of this, and I was trying to imagine a way that the fashion and clothing industry might be changed from a linear one, where everything gets used very little and ultimately ends up in a landfill, to one where clothing gets used much more and at its end of life gets recycled back into the next generation of clothing or other products. The last part is key to making it truly circular. In a circular economy, everything, at the end of its useful life, needs to be broken down and remade into something new. In case you didn't know, I didn't, fabric can be broken down and remade back into thread, which can be made into the next generation of clothing. There are already a few fabric recyclers out there. How could the clothing industry be reimagined and restructured so that that's just what happens with clothing when nobody wants it anymore? To me, that's the biggest challenge. Let's face it, consumer-based recycling has never really caught on with everyone, and while it might result in a small amount or even a decent amount, it would never result in all and not even likely a majority of clothing ending up getting recycled. People just won't do it. People hardly even recycle cans and bottles, much less old jeans and t-shirts. If post-consumer recycling isn't that reliable, then I started wondering how a company might end up with the clothing at the end of its useful life, and why they would want to. One obvious example that came to mind was when I've had to rent a tux for a wedding or other formal occasion. Tux rental companies buy tuxedos, rent them out for a certain amount of time, and when they are worn out or too out of fashion, they then dispose of them in some way. Since they still own the garment, it is possible that they could sell it to a fabric recycler to be recycled at that point. That business model seemed like a good step, but obviously isn't a perfect model for everyday clothing. Could that be changed or adapted for the kind of clothes that people actually wear on a regular basis? Lots of things in this world are switching to a service or subscription-based model. A very common example being streaming services. You subscribe to Netflix, for example, and can watch anything you want that is available on there as long as you keep paying your subscription. A good physical example in many companies are the large printers and copy machines. Most large companies don't actually buy copiers anymore. They contract with a printer company. The printer company owns the machines, and they keep them in good repair, fix them when they're not, provide the toner, etc. The original company doesn't have to worry about anything except paying the bill for the service. They're buying the service of printing and copying, not buying hardware. I started wondering if some kind of subscription service could be used with clothing. I wasn't sure, but it seemed worth thinking about. If it could be made to work, then the subscription company would end up with the clothing at the end of its usable life, and so then could sell it to a fabric recycling company. I started thinking along those lines and trying to figure out why a consumer would want to have a clothing subscription and why the company would want to offer such a subscription. Obviously, it has to benefit both. Plus, it should also benefit the manufacturer if possible. Well, what's the benefit of having Netflix? Having access to a large library of movies, shows, and documentaries that you can watch whenever you want. As long as you continue to pay your subscription, then you can continue to watch their content. What's the benefit to Netflix? They have millions of paying subscribers sending them money every month. This large, regular income that could be counted on month after month was a game changer and virtually remade the entire film and television industry in a decade. Lots of other companies joined in, and now there are many streaming services to subscribe to. Of course, a subscription for clothing would have to work a little differently than a streaming subscription. With a streaming subscription, they can deliver whatever program you want to watch instantly to your device. With a clothing subscription, they would have to physically send you clothing. How much clothing can you get at one time? Would it be a set number of pieces of clothing? Could you pay more to get more? What if one piece is much more expensive than another? What happens when things are no longer in fashion or don't fit you anymore? I started trying to work out a model that might be able to deal with all of those things. Is it possible to make a model for the fashion industry that is sustainable, makes the manufacturer and subscription companies more money, makes the designers more money, gets clothing used far more, and would have enough advantages for consumers that they would want to use it? Here's what I eventually came up with. Let's say a large clothing company offers subscriptions for a certain number of points, like 50, for example. Now let's say that each piece of clothing would be worth a certain number of points. Let's say this shirt is 5 points. These jeans are 10 points. This jacket is 15 points. These shoes are 10 points. This belt is 2 points, and so on. With a 50-point subscription, you can order up to 50 points of clothing from the retailer or subscription company. A couple pairs of jeans, a jacket, a few shirts, whatever. They ship you the clothes. Or if they have a physical store nearby, you can simply go pick them out, try them on at the store, and take them home. It's a subscription, so you can keep the clothes as long as you keep paying your subscription. And more importantly, you can exchange the clothes any time you want. Let's say you receive those 10-point jeans and they just don't fit quite right, and you just don't like them as much as you thought, or you just don't wear them as often as you thought you would. You simply go onto their site or app, select what you want to return, which immediately frees up those points, and then select what you want to order instead. They send your new items to you. When the shipment arrives, you take your new items out, you put your new returns into the bag, reseal it, slap the return label on it, and send it back. If a person gains weight or loses weight, if they get pregnant, they simply mark for return the clothes that aren't fitting and order new ones in new sizes with those points. If it is fall now and I don't need my summer clothes anymore, I can just swap them out for some fall clothes instead with those points. As long as I keep paying my subscription, then I can swap out the clothes whenever I want. I could completely change my wardrobe every month if I wanted. have growing kids and are tired of constantly having to buy them new clothes only for them to outgrow them in 6 months or a year? Just use a subscription and swap out for larger sizes whenever they get too tight or short. We all know that we have clothes sitting in our closets that we've only worn a couple times. Under this model, if you aren't wearing them, you'll just send them back and use those points to order something that you will wear. Since you're always paying a little bit for everything you have out on the subscription, you're going to be far less likely to accumulate a closet full of clothes that you aren't wearing. Send them back, and someone else will get the clothes that you didn't want or need. Another benefit of this model: imagine never needing to pack clothes for traveling again. Instead, you simply order clothes from the retailer and have them delivered to your hotel. You pick up your shipment at the front desk. When you are done, you simply throw everything back in the box or bag, put on the return label, and drop it back off at the front desk. No need to carry suitcases into the airport or through security. No need to worry about the airline losing your luggage, because without clothes, you would only need a small carry-on bag. You arrive at the hotel and your wardrobe for the week is already there waiting for you, whether that is business attire or vacation clothes such as beachwear, hiking clothes, ski outfits, etc. Retailers could offer special vacation subscription editions, where the customer could get an extra 100 points, for example, for the week or two of the customer's travel. That way they don't need to send the clothes back that they already have, and they don't need to spend a huge amount of money to buy a whole new wardrobe for a week-long vacation. Now the argument comes up that some people would be worried about the clothes they order not fitting them. For that eventuality, perhaps the retailer could have a physical location in the airports of popular destinations. You arrive in Hawaii. Once you come out, past security, you stop at the store location, pick out a bunch of clothes for the week, and go off and enjoy yourself. Then, when you're done and you come back to the airport to go home, you simply drop the clothes back off before you go through security. In addition, since these clothes don't need to travel on the plane, they're not going to use up so much jet fuel, and traveling by jet is one of the most inefficient ways to travel. They can travel by a cargo ship over to Hawaii, and they only need to get there one time because they're going to stay there until they're no longer needed. The subscription company can just have a warehouse in Hawaii that stores, cleans, and repairs the clothing without the need to ship them back to the mainland. They can eliminate a lot of the weight of a plane and therefore can save on fuel and emissions from the plane, which are much higher. Okay, so what about the side of the subscription company? How does it benefit them? Let's say the subscription is $1 per point. So a 50-point subscription is $50 a month. The subscriber can order anything they want up to 50 points. They can spend all 50 on one expensive item, or they can be frugal and get a bunch of items. Let's say the customer orders a pair of jeans for 10 points. That's $10 per month that is being brought in by that one pair of jeans. I have jeans that I've had for a few years. Each year that these jeans are out on a subscription is $120 for that company. The first customer doesn't keep them long and sends them back. Okay, send them out to the next one who orders that size. In this new model, the longer something lasts, the more revenue it will generate for the company. The buyers for the subscription company will start prioritizing quality over just cost. They will start looking for clothing that lasts longer and cleans and repairs easier, to always be looking in new condition. Yes, the company will need to have staff to process the returns, and need to have places to keep the inventory that isn't out on a subscription right now. But just imagine having a few million subscribers paying $50, $100, or even $200 a month. That adds up really fast. Also, when there is inevitable wear and tear, those articles of clothing might be moved to a section of bargains with much lower point values, because they are in a lower quality condition. There are always going to be people who would like to make their subscription points stretch farther, and don't mind a little wear as long as the clothes still look decent. Also, since fashion trends move so quickly, the points on any one item wouldn't stay the same forever, regardless of the condition. The point values would have to be reevaluated at least once a year or season. Next season, the current clothes might drop in value because they aren't as popular. Those jeans are now only 7 or 8 points instead of 10. If a consumer keeps those jeans that entire time, they will suddenly find themselves with 2 or 3 freed up points that they can use to order something else. Perhaps each clothing subscription service can have lots of different levels of quality. Each might have a super exclusive brand, a few lower luxury brands, and other decreasing levels of brands and styles available for all types of consumers. And maybe clothes simply travel down through those different levels as they age, fall out of fashion, or become worn. How much more use would each piece of clothing get in a model like this? People order things they want to wear, and when they are tired of them, they return them for something else that they will wear. And those returns go to someone else to use. People can have one consistent cost for clothing and yet always be wearing the latest fashions. In this model, clothing belongs to the subscription company, so that's where it will be at its end of life. Whether that is because it's too worn out or too out of fashion for anyone to want it anymore, the subscription company can determine where those clothes go from there, and the clothes can be sold to a fabric recycler to be shredded back down, remade into thread, and manufactured into the next generation of clothes, which will be sold back to the subscription company. And when there is excess inventory and no retailer wants it, or subscription service, just sell it straight to the fabric recycling facility to be turned back into thread. No need to send it straight to a landfill. This constant flow of recycled material would become a major, consistent, and reliable source of raw materials for clothing manufacturers, and another source of revenue for the subscription companies. This also brings up the question of how easily recycled something is. Things that are all of one material, such as cotton or wool, are easily recycled back into thread. When something is made of mixed materials, it is much more difficult to separate and therefore much more difficult to recycle. Since selling the clothes back to a fabric recycler at the end of life would be an important revenue and material stream in this model, purchasers would not only start prioritizing quality in their purchasing, but recyclability. How easily this material can be broken down and remade into the next generation of fashion will largely determine its sellback price at the end of its life, and is hugely important for making this industry circular and sustainable. The retailer could have contracts with different fabric recyclers to take different kinds of materials. They could even have contracts with companies who might take the mixed material fabrics and do something else with them, like make insulation or some other completely different type of product. That's the goal of a circular economy, to make everything at its end of life an input in the making of the next generation of stuff. While making sure that it's recycled at the end of its usable life is an essential part of this model, recycling is the last resort once no more use can be gotten out of them. Keeping clothing in use longer will always be more efficient than recycling. So another thing the subscription company will want to do is to have a repair department. Whenever there are small tears or damage in the clothing, they can simply be fixed up in the repair department and ready to go out on another subscription. This will be even more important as clothing is gradually redesigned to be higher quality and last longer, and therefore more expensive. They will want to keep their investments making a profit for them as long as possible. They could even have agreements with the manufacturers to supply them with spare buttons and zippers and pieces of fabric for those lines of clothing so that repairs can be made. Obviously, this is a very different model for the clothing industry, and many changes would need to take place for this to be realized. For one, there would have to be partnerships between different companies in different industries. For example, a large retailer with a wide array of brands could try out this model, but they would need to partner with a professional cleaning service. Just as tuxedos need professionally cleaned when they are returned, all of the clothing returned would need to be professionally cleaned and evaluated and possibly repaired before being sent out again. In addition, a fabric recycling facility would need to be partnered with to accept the clothing that is too damaged or out of fashion to be used anymore. Overall, this model has a lot of benefits for the consumers and the retailers or subscription companies and the manufacturers. Profit margins can be increased for the manufacturers as they can make much higher quality and longer lasting clothing and sell at much higher prices. Profit margins can be increased for the retailers and subscription companies as they will have regular income coming in from large numbers of subscribers. Much more money per piece of clothing can be made. And consumers get the benefit of being able to wear all the latest fashions they would like with a much lower upfront cost and the freedom to exchange whatever they want whenever they want. And all of these benefits can be realized while making the fashion industry considerably more sustainable and circular. After I came up with this model, I did start looking around, and actually there are quite a few clothing rental and subscription services out there, like Armoire, Vestiaire, Nuuly, Rent the Runway, etc. I love that these services exist as they are getting much more use out of the clothing, but so far they seem to be a bit limited in how they work. What you get with your subscription, and at the end, they're often just selling their old pieces off, which means they won't get recycled and still might ultimately end up in landfills. They are a great step in the right direction. The ones I've looked at fall a bit short of a true circular business model. Try them out and see how they work for you, and show the fashion industry that people are interested in subscription services for clothing. If you have friends, family, colleagues in the clothing industry, or just interested in a circular fashion industry, send this over to them and see what they think of it. I'm really just trying to put this business model out there and see what happens with it. Thanks for listening. I'm Eric Sparks. For more info or to contact me or for a text version of this article, visit sparksustainability.com.